Hi, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
We can't see you because the lights are really bright this end, so we can't see you, so I'm assuming it's full. I'll just take that. My name's Ricky Sutton. This is
Chris Duncan. Good afternoon.
Amazing. So this is Scotch and Watch. So if any of you haven't caught it on the web so far, as you just heard, it started as two friends having a chat. And I live in the future because I live in Sydney, so it's always 12 hours ahead of London. So I got to drink Scotch, and Chris had to have coffee because it was the morning, and you just had to watch, right?
Yeah.
And what we do is we report on the collision of big media and big tech. And I've run an AI company. Chris has run massive global media companies. I've been a war correspondent. I've run media companies too. And we're talking about the collision of big tech and big media with AI and real-life stories thrown in, okay? We are on a world tour. Madrid is the latest stop. We've done Broadway in New York, which was awesome. We've done Paris. We've done London. We've done Sydney. And we're thrilled to be here, so thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so we're going to kick off today with a really quick rundown of things that have happened this year. So it's been a really, really busy year. We're just going to start the scene with that. But then what we're going to do is we're going to run a series of predictions based on things that we're seeing happening in the market very broadly. And we're going to talk them through. And if you want to heckle or shout or throw things, that's all fine. This is a podcast, it's live, and that's absolutely cool. So we're going to kick off with a rundown of the year. So for everybody here, and I know you're our crowd, right? We know you're our tribe. We have had a massive year, right? We've had antitrust trials with Google. We've had antitrust trials with Meta. I don't know if you've been following them, but we've had Google lost all three of its antitrust trials on the App Store, on the search, and also on its ad tech. We had one positive ruling for publishers on the App Store. We had one very negative ruling for publishers on search. And we have the third decision on ad tech coming probably before the end of this year. So there is a lot of change coming for us. Meta has also been antitrusted this year with an intention from the Department of Justice, who we've had on this podcast, to break it up and force it to sell or divest or let go of Instagram and WhatsApp, which would be devastating for them and fantastic for social media, and I think personally I'd be thrilled. And so we're waiting to see what happens on that one as well. We've seen AI overviews pop up. How many of you know about AI overviews? Yeah, how many of you love AI overviews? Thank you to the man in row 4. Okay, so AI overviews was a patent when a Google insider leaked it to me, and I got to break the story about that. So I've known about it for a long time. But for the last 12 years, I've also run an AI company. So I do have a clear sense of what it means. There are court cases taking place all over the world now about this. There's a lot to come on that, and it will come up today a little bit in our conversations. So look, the world we live in is moving very fast. It's not going to slow down. AI is affecting everything. It's a re-platforming of our industry. It's exciting if we can be on the right side of that future. And so we're going to make some predictions. And as I said, disagree. Please tell us what you think. So.
And on our record on predictions, so in last week, we went through the predictions that we'd made the year before, which is a good exercise if you want to find out you're ultimately quite fallible. So what we found actually was, we got a lot of the direction right, didn't we? But we're always think things will slightly happen faster than they do.
That's very polite. My timing sucks. Yeah, is basically the situation.
So I will prepare you for today. We're going to just talk about. So we're going to talk about opportunities for publishers, things that we can see that we expect to happen in the next sort of year, 18 months. But it might be 2-3 years. But this is the kind of landscape piece. So I'm just going to rattle through a few. The first one that we talked about a bit was we think there'll be a kind of reassertion by governments of cultural sovereignty. So we think that nations will basically say, I don't really want to accept either a Chinese or an American interpretation of my media laws that comes with the technology that's being sold to me. And so we see there being quite a big pushback from nations and in the EU. And we think that'll have a couple of impacts. My bet is that by probably the middle of next year, the UK will have blocked its first provider. And I think it'll be 4-channel Rumble. And they'll block that from operating in the UK because they won't comply with UK media laws. And I think the EU will take a chunk out of one of the big platforms, again, by probably the middle of next year. That's prediction number 1. And the benefit for publishers is it's just going to create a much better cultural setup in every territory you operate in.
So I just did a deep investigation into what I call the splinternet. And so we're going to see lots of different internets with different rules. And the interesting thing is that there are now, according to my research, which was actually validated by the World Bank actually a couple of days ago, there's about 150 countries that have either already changed the rules or are in the process of doing so. Sarah, you're from Canada, so I know there's a lot of talk there about data sovereignty. If AI is going to be the future and data is going to be the fuel that powers that rocket, do you really want your content just leaving your borders and going straight to America to train an American AI? I think a lot of people are very sensitive about that. So I think we are going to see a splinter net. But one of the real challenges for all of us as publishers, and I know that's where many of you come from, is that imagine if we had just different version of GDPR in 150 countries. How do we publish?
Well, really, but by the time we kind of come back next year for the FIP conference, you could be looking out in this room and seeing 20 to 30 different jurisdictions, different sets of media laws operating. So if you're a global organization, you're going to spend a bit of your time on that next year, I would say.
So where this opens up an opportunity, and the conversation that I've already been, part of my job is to kind of see these things way down the road early. That's kind of my responsibility. I started an AI company in 2014. No one could even spell it then, right? So it's kind of like, it's to try and get ahead of it. For me, it feels like this is a territory for the CMS. This is a real opportunity for CMSs to build that kind of functionality into its publishing platform. But all of that's coming, so that's what we talk about.
Second one, I would say public sentiment around AI. I think over the course of the next 12 months, you're going to see a lot of conversations about what is the actual revenue model of the AI sort of pure players, and how's that going to play out. And secondly, we're going to see a lot of liabilities start to bubble to the surface. So you heard Sam Altman talk the other day about AI erotica. We're seeing it in gaming, we're seeing it in gambling, we're seeing it in stock trading, we're seeing it in market manipulation, we're seeing it in Bitcoin. All of this is going to play out as a backdrop. Public sentiment is already a little bit unsure about where AI is going to go, and I think the opportunity for publishers is to clearly position ourselves as an industry, as a completely separate entity, and to try and build a kind of position for ourselves against that backdrop.
So it's very clear that AI is going to be a massive part of our future no matter what happens, okay? So can I just ask, how many of you actually have people in your business who are explicitly employed in AI? As an AI role?
About a third of you, probably.
Okay, so I'm old enough to have been there when the internet first started. And I remember what happened. What we did was we said, hey, you're the editor. There's always somebody from print. I came from print, but you know, it was always somebody from print because that's where we make all our money. So the CEO has to be from there. My opinion is every media company at this point should have an AI specialist in the business, and that should be the next CEO. Because AI will be the platform that we're publishing next. So journalism is something that a lot of people in the office share, but the AI experience is very limited, often to one person. Please don't put the AI person in the corner office over there that no one talks to like we did with the internet. Let's recognize it's going to happen and get ahead of it.
Welcome to all the CEOs in here that Ricky just replaced. Copyright, let's talk quick on copyright, but we know that there are about 38, 39 fair use cases still sat in the US courts. We know that there's a copyright consultation sat in the UK courts. We know that there's a digital markets consultation on copyright sat with the EU. All of those things are about to unfold at the same time as we've suddenly seen, I don't know if Chris Dicker's in the room, but we've suddenly seen this explosion of sort of...
I'm very disappointed if he's not.
Oh, I'm sure he will be. Of CDN intervention, which is effectively... people like Cloudflare, people like Tollbit saying we're going to basically have to understand what's happening with bot traffic, and by understanding what's happening with bot traffic, we're going to give publishers a way of opting out of AI without a kind of legal copyright opt-out. So those two things play hand in hand. Copyright changes the law and potentially an opt-in at a CDN level, both of which give publishers finally, I think, more leverage than we've had in the last few years to say, actually, we're going to choose whether we get crawled or not.
Entirely agree. How many of you are in the Cloudflare project? That surprises me.
One at the back.
I would have a chat with them, okay, and just find out what they're up to. The idea is pay per crawl. So whenever it comes to you and queries your content, you get paid something, all right? So I was in the boardroom at News Corp when we did the deal with Google in the late 90s. The deal was, they said, we'll bring you traffic. And I said, well, great, because we sell a lot of that. So that's great. I'll do a deal for traffic. What I should have done is I should have been paid for every search query that they made to us. We would have then risen with their value. So pay per crawl is a very interesting new way of doing this. I do want to add one other thing, though. AI overviews. So AI Overviews takes your content, and AI mode as well, right? So it takes your content, it passes it through an AI, it rewrites it, it publishes it on google.com or wherever it decides to publish it, and then the reader reads that and leaves. Here's the interesting thing. The tech companies have managed to use two laws to not be liable in the same way we are for the kind of things that they do. So they use fair use, we can take anything we want and we'll just use it. And they use Section 230, which is effectively an American rule that says that they can publish virtually anything they want, but because they're a platform, they're not liable for it. But that ends if AI Overviews continues down the path it's on. If it takes your content, rewrites it, and publishes on google.com as a commercial business, it's a publisher, not a platform. And they're going to have a cold wake-up call when they suddenly realize what defamation feels like.
So your big prediction, Ricky, is you think Section 230 will be sort of pulled out again and revised probably sometime after the November midterms, I would say, back at 26.
I do. There is bipartisan American support for a reformation of Section 230 to make it relevant and contextual. It's a 1997 law.
Well, this was originally a law that was put in place so that AT&T wouldn't be liable if I phoned you up and called you a dick.
That's right, which you do.
And they said, you said you can't be liable for what people say down that pipe, and now it's being used to justify all kinds of things. So I think that's one of those that's going to get disinterred. Meta, synthetic content. Mm-hmm. This is an opportunity for publishers because we see all the evidence that we see is that Meta will continue to generate both synthetic users, synthetic content, synthetic reactions to that content, and will generate synthetic advertising, outcome-based advertising to run all between those things. So we believe that the world of kind of your traditional world of Instagram and the Facebook app is already changing. WhatsApp is going to be much more heavily monetized in the next 12 months and is going to be the source of a lot of the data insight that Meta needs to feed Llama et al. And so we believe that the Meta experience on the Meta apps will degrade significantly in the next 12 months.
Yeah, so Meta, so one of the things I really want to clear, we myth bust a little bit. We call BS on some stuff here. So social media, or Meta, isn't a social media company, it's an advertising company. 99.7% of its revenue comes from advertising. So it's an ad company. 87% of Google's revenue comes from advertising. It's not a search company, it's an ad company, right? If it was a search company, it would make its money from search. It doesn't, it makes its money from advertising. So I think that's important to recognize. Meta's business, Facebook is dead in the water, it's not growing. Instagram is growing, and its advertising is growing very strongly. And WhatsApp is enormous and is all its audience. But the antitrust trial it's facing at the moment says that it has to get rid of Instagram and it has to get rid of WhatsApp. And then we've got a social media market, because then we've got 3 or 4 social media, plus TikTok, social media companies competing with each other. So Meta's answer to this is, we've got so much content on our platform, so much, that we've taught our AIs to be able to create its own pictures of cute kittens. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get people to look at those and we're going to use a computer to sell it. So you remember that old story that, if you're not paying for it, you're the product? Okay, we're about to be sold synthetic content with synthetic ads by a synthetic CO, basically, and that's our future in social. So I'd probably move on if I was you.
So that's the world outside. So we get 4 assists in my world. You get better cultural sovereignty, you get an AI assist, you get a copyright assist, and you probably get platform assists. So what do we do as publishers? So when we sit down and we think about that, we're thinking about if you were sat in the chair of a publisher and you just literally arrived, it was your first day as a CEO of a publishing business, and you see the world literally as it is, what are the things that you should be thinking about? So we said, in terms of big opportunities, firstly, you have the opportunity to define a strategy that is post-traffic and post-retail. And by that I mean post-traffic is if we see the world is basically not delivering this sort of deal that I publish content off platform and traffic returns to me. I'm cruel by AI, traffic returns to me. If traffic is declining, and I think if I'm not going to ask you, well, I am going to ask you, how many of you in the room would say over the last 12 months you have seen extraordinary growth in your digital traffic?
Yeah, that's a surprising answer.
How many of you would say in the next 5 to 10 years you would expect that extraordinary growth to return? So from a strategy perspective, we're slightly in a post-traffic world, which takes you down a owned product, direct distribution, driving engagement strategy. In the print side of the business, now this is really mixed across different territories and different sectors and different things. If you're a TV guide or you're a puzzles publisher, you're sitting pretty happy at the moment. If you're in the women's market, it's tougher. If you're in different geographical markets, it's different. But realistically, particularly for the UK, this is true. The strategy that you have to have for print is that ultimately you're going to be a direct-to-consumer product. You're going to be a magazine that gets delivered rather than one that goes through retail. So you need a post-traffic, post-retail strategy.
Yeah. So let me tell you about, so we're talking about, we're heading towards the end of print. Are we talking about this?
It is a question of when. Not necessarily when we say the end. I think of the end of print like I think of vinyl, which is it's basically a niche product. It's high value to some people. It's extremely expensive to those people because it's a small distribution point. But vinyl will be there for the next 100 years. And print will be there for the next 100 years. What it won't be is in every single retailer, in every single kind of magazine shop in the country.
I think that's right. So here's an interesting perspective from Australia, okay? So when we publish newspapers on print, I used to be the managing editor at News Corp in Australia. And so our process for publishing newspapers was we'd buy paper in China, we'd put it on a boat, we'd sail it from China to Melbourne, we'd take it off a boat in Melbourne, we'd put it on a press, we'd then run those presses in Sydney and Melbourne, we'd print the paper, we'd then drive it literally for 12 hours in a truck to Central Australia where we'd sell it for $1. If you were starting a media company, would you think that would be your distribution choice? It feels to me like that has to end. It's inevitable that that's going to end. So what do we do now that we don't have digital distribution to rely on, okay? Then we have to think differently. Now, there are many, many different ideas being shared, and they're all being shared here, and I love the fact that we're trying to get ahead of this. I really do love it. But one thing I will tell you is about the experience that I've just had, and Chris is having at the moment, around newsletters. And that direct one-to-one relationship with your newsletter audience, it's really rich. So I used to also be the news editor of a newspaper in the UK. I had 60 million readers, right? I could go to any pub in the country and get a free beer because of that, but I didn't know my readers. I've got 18,000 subscribers to the newsletter, and I know all of them. And so it's a much richer experience. So I think newsletters, I hope, will become a bigger and bigger and bigger part of our distribution strategies.
Well, that's the next thought, really. Other newsletters are available. That's the next thought, really, which is if you're post-traffic, I think it's fair to say if you're a big publisher, you've ended up basically doing some of the content that you do because you can get an ad return or a traffic return. And for most publishers, the next step is really thinking, being super ruthless. I was impressed this morning about the Economist or Semaphore, how clear they are about their content proposition. Condé Nast in Spain, how clear it is, time, how clear it is. And I think what we're about to see in the next year or so is more focus, but the other side of that is more formats. So most editorial teams are going to be saying, we've really got to cut down the amount of things that we are going to be famous for, that we're going to be known for, and that we can get direct distribution for. In return, we're going to have to be in these areas that we're going to be famous for. We're going to be in text, we're going to be in video, we're going to be in audio, we're going to be in newsletters, we're going to be on platform, we're going to be off platform, we're going to be famous, in all these different ways. We're going to be on YouTube, which gets us into TV. We're going to do all these things. So my bet is more focus, more formats.
Do you agree? Yeah. So we have
you
to
should
take...
cheer when you agree with me.
I'll do it for you, mate. Oh, by the way, we are drinking scotch, just in case you know. So we're loosening up as we're going. So it's clearly the case that AI is going to make it easier to do that, to fractionalize our content into multiple different formats. So, we've all had the, hey, I'm in print, now I'm in digital, now I'm in video, now I'm in audio, now I'm doing podcasts, now I'm doing newsletters. That's not going to stop. That's going to continue. And we're also now probably going to have slightly different versions of our articles in multiple different languages, in multiple different jurisdictions. So I actually did some research recently, a kind of leap forward into the future to imagine what it would like to be a news editor in 2030. It's a fascinating thought experiment, okay? Because the first thing you're going to get on your desk in 2030, I predict, is a compliance list of all the places where you stepped outside the rules of the splinter net. It's going to be the first thing you're going to get. It's going to be red, amber, green, green, red, amber. And we're going to have to manage this whole different perspective. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty busy already. And the idea of adding more and more layers of more hassle is going to be really tough. But what I truly believe in about us as an industry is that We get derided by big tech, but fuck that, excuse me, right? We're really creative people. We fought through wars. I've been a war correspondent. We have won every single time people have tried to silence us. Governments have tried to silence us. People have been to war for that, right? We have won through on every occasion, and we'll win through this one. So I was on South by Southwest on stage last week, and somebody said to me, do you think the media industry is ending? And this was my response. So 45,000 years ago, the first humans sat around a campfire, grunted at each other, pointed at the stars, and asked each other what was going on. That was the dawn of journalism, right? And it's going to be around for another 200,000 years after this, and big tech's been here for 20 years. So do we really give a shit? I think at the end of the day, we're going to re-platform, and that will be fine. But what we do, telling the news, will remain.
Having said that, where I do think we have to pay attention is every big technology shift brings a little kind of following cloud of things that change when it comes in. So if you remember when Amazon first came in, suddenly every checkout in the world looked terrible. Right? And it wasn't that actually everybody had to have a shopping experience. It was just that Amazon had completely redefined how you paid for things, and everybody had to get better at that. When we brought in, I don't know if Craig Llewellyn was here earlier, so when we built the first kind of Times edition on the iPad.
This is the London Times.
This is the Times of London, the original, and still the best.
Yeah, I know. Richard with the managing director, yep.
When we built that the first time, we were having to get used to touchscreens. We had to think about how does touchscreen experience work, right? So it brings this kind of design language, visual cues, all the rest of it. So the next thing I think there's a big opportunity for publishers is the idea of curation as a service. I can't think of a better phrase than that. I had lots of versions, but curation as a service, which is thinking about if the design language of AI is going to be prompts, it's going to be retention of all of the things you've looked at before, so it's going to have a kind of a long memory.
Yep.
Right? It's going to have the ability to bring back questions you've asked before. It's going to have agents which actually act on the things that you enable it to do. So if I think about those four things as a design kind of language, I'm thinking about curation as a service. I'm a news or a magazine provider. How am I going to think about people asking me questions? You've seen that example with the Washington Post does this very well. You've seen quite a few examples while we've been here about internal kind of LLMs. You're going to have to think about how you kind of retain information of what people have read or looked at, because that's going to become the default. You're going to have to think about this idea of what actions will people want to take as a result of the journalism that we provide? And how do I then enable that to happen? Because that will happen in people's other technology. So curation as a service, I think there's a lot of work to do there on product, and we'll do that in the next year.
How excited are we about building new stuff with AI? Are we excited, or are we fearful? Come on, team.
Excited. We're excited, Ricky.
Is it? Yeah, it is. Okay, all right. So thank you very much indeed.
Yep.
Go on, next one.
Next one, this is a bit riskier, but actually I had a conversation at lunchtime which told me this might not be as risky as I thought. Gradually, I think we are getting to the point, and you and I have worked in sort of media organizations for a long time, and one of the things about every 5 years, there's a sort of a lawyer jerga, which everybody comes up, all the tribes come from everywhere, and we all sit down and say, we as a publishing industry should collaborate, and we should think about a product where people can come and access quality journalism for a reasonable price and choose between the different brands. And then one of the tribes says, yeah, but I don't want you to run it, and we all fall out and disappear again. My bet is that 2026 will be the year in which you genuinely start to see that emerging as a product solution.
So my read on this, I always try and draw a colourful analogy, is that I spend an awful lot of time working with global CEOs now. And, you know, I basically say, I turn up and their CEOs are always the same. How many CEOs in the room? Anyway, maybe you're here. There's a lot of curmudgeonly fury about, this is just awful, this shouldn't be happening to me. But individually as publishers, we're angry, indignant ants fighting with elephants. But collectively, we're the bigger elephant. And big tech knows this and uses it against us, okay? So they will routinely say to me in conversation, but you guys can't organize yourself, so why should we care, right? In the Google antitrust trial, in the search antitrust trial, evidence was given in court about AI overviews. And when the judge gave his judgment at the end of that, he said, I'm not doing anything about AI overviews, even though I know it's massively damaging publishing, because none of the publishers could organize themselves to give evidence in my court. How do you feel about that? Right? One person needed to get in the court and tell the story, and you'd have got a massive change. But we didn't turn up in the court because we didn't organize ourselves. Just stop doing that.
Which kind of jumps us onto people. Talent. Now, we know, and actually, Conde was quite good at this earlier. We know that traditionally we've both worked in news or magazine companies where the masthead is the brand. And in time, the masthead is the brand. And so people have worked for that. The Economist, I think Luke said earlier, actually, you don't get a byline if you write for The Economist. The talent is the brand.
Yep.
The challenge for all of us in publishing is that that's not actually how the digital economy kind of works in terms of people having trust and people having voices that they want to come back and hear. So my prediction for next year is that there's got to be a massive talent development program in all publishers. We're going to make the argument that we are a human media compared to machine media and synthetic media. You will not be able to do that if you're sitting behind a brand masthead as your depiction of a human being. So if you look at the people who are cutting through at the moment, it's people who are putting human talent, people's faces they recognize, voices they recognize, tone they recognize, opinions they recognize, positions they recognize, people that are prepared to explain, people that are prepared to kind of take the extra time to sort of give, reach out to other sides of opinion and explain why that happens. And I think there's got to be a huge talent push next year. There's an opportunity for publishers to really make their talent famous.
100% agree. So all journalists are all different, but we're all really good at what we do. Okay, so not everyone wants to get up here and do stuff like Chris and I do here. We're not expecting that. But all of us are experts in our field, and we should dive very, very deeply into that. Our values as individuals, journalists, is incredibly powerful now. So, of course, when we work for a brand, we are a custodian of that brand. I understand that. But look at Reach in the UK. It's launched 36 different Substacks now from its staff. It went to its staff and said, hey, would any of you like to write a Substack? And you can write about any passion you choose, right? So it could be Liverpool Football Club, it could be knitting on a Tuesday. And a whole load of them stepped up and said, we'd like to do it. And Reach said, that's terrific. You go do that, okay, and we will give you time off to do it, right? So I see real opportunities to turn personality journalism into something in a world of homogenized AI
Well,
content.
also in a world where we're competing with TV anchors, we're competing with audio and radio podcast stars, we're competing with creators, all of whom are personalities. These are human faces. So I think publishing needs to just humanize itself a little more.
Yeah, totally. Let's make some stars.
And we're on the home leg, folks. Last two predictions. Advertising. I think that. So we know that Google will be through the cases. I will throw my hat in the ring, and I will say I think Google is going to lose in the ad tech trial in the US, and I think they're going to follow that up by losing in the EU. And in both cases, the remedy will be divestment of AdX.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that the search antitrust trial that we had a really bad ruling. I don't know if you guys followed this, but what the DOJ, what the Department of Justice wanted was for Google Chrome to be sold and to leave Google, and they wanted all these changes, and none of them happened. The interesting thing is that when the case was first brought, AI was mentioned twice in this, 12,000 words. I've read 1 million words of evidence in this court case, but literally I read this massive 60,000 word document, and AI was mentioned twice in the original complaint that Google was prosecuted for. In the decision, that they were found to be an illegal monopolist, it was mentioned 12 times, right? So it wasn't that big a deal. In the final decision not to prosecute Google for anything and to let them off, it was mentioned 74 times. So we ended up getting a sentence for a thing that wasn't the prosecution. It's like I was prosecuted for stealing a loaf of bread, but they've let me off drink driving. It made no sense, so I think they'll lose that as well on a point of law.
I would ask, actually, just while we're here, how many of you are currently involved in class action suits with Google? Well done. Yep. I would highly recommend. These lovely people in about the fourth row here, you should talk.
These us or them?
Yeah,
we can help
to them in the break. If liability, so liability basically says the court has ruled that Google was a monopolist. And therefore, if there's a class action suit that says there was harm from that monopoly, it's fairly easy to win it. I would recommend that every single one of you in the room joins in with the class action suits that are running currently in Canada, the US, Australia, the UK, and the EU. Why would you not at this point?
I would strongly recommend that.
Um,
And if you want to know about it, come find us. We'd love to help you and connect you up with the lawyers.
Yeah, and if anybody is prepared to share, actually, if someone else asked me, if anyone's prepared to share information about the impact of AI overviews on their traffic and on their business, who's in the EU jurisdiction and would like to be a friend to the UK people who are pursuing a separate case on that, let us know and we'll connect you, because there are people who would like some collaboration.
Let's help our friends.
Last one, and then we'll sort of sum up where we think that gets us. One of the interesting things that I said to Ricky a couple of weeks ago, like if we go back when I was doing sort of this sort of prediction in like 2007 or something, 2008, 2009, there was a lot of brand safety concern amongst the advertising community, and this was a time when I was working at News UK, and we decided to go back to the Cannes Festival, and so I was frankly knobbing around at the Cannes Festival on a yacht, kind of being very big media. And all of the talk, this was when the guy from P&G, Mark, can't remember his surname, stood up and he said, you know, we're the second biggest advertiser, the biggest advertiser in the world, and we will not put up with this kind of brand safety issue. The social media companies need to change the way they do content moderation, otherwise we as advertisers will walk.
I remember.
Every single year from that point onwards, advertising spend on digital platforms has gone up double digits, sometimes 20% a year. So, what's about to happen, I think, in the advertising world is the sort of the measurement systems in advertising for large advertisers have gravitated towards last click. Last click advertising matched with econometrics, which says, this guy sort of bought me the sale, but I've got some econometrics that says when I was on TV, when I was on radio, when I was in print, when I was elsewhere, that seems to have an impact on the overall performance of my two hands. What's about to happen is AI kind of agents are going to come in, all of which are integrated with Shopify and integrated with Amazon, and they are going to say, we were the last click. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be able to demonstrate that. And it's going to cause a kerfuffle, a big kind of shake-up in the world of ad attribution in terms of how big advertisers allocate their money, because it can't be true that last week Google was entirely responsible for every kind of, or Facebook was entirely responsible for every sale.
They'll claim
and
it.
the week after that, OpenAI is responsible for every single sale. It doesn't work like that. So the opportunity for publishers is to be on top of that conversation and to think about how do we as a publishing industry, how do we as a news industry or a magazine industry or a professional media organization insert ourselves into that conversation.
100%. So let's have a quick chat about programmatic. So in 2007, Google bought DoubleClick and became an advertising company and stopped being a search engine. And so when that happened, the chief revenue officer of the media company I was working for at the time ran into my office and just said, the best thing ever has happened. Like, we're going to be able to sell all of our inventory, remnant and premium, and Google's going to look after all of it, so we can get rid of 3/4 of the sales team, our costs are going to go down, our revenue's going to go up. And I said, but the CPM's going to collapse, right? And he said, yeah, Ricky, but any dollar's a good dollar. We've made that mistake every year ever since, okay? It's only a good dollar if it's more than you cost. And we've gotten to the point that we're now not making money from programmatic. So several media companies that I've spoken to at this event and over the last 12 months are telling me that all of the content they publish on the open web is no longer commercially profitable, because the sell-through of the advertising and the CPM of the advertising has now become so low. Now, in the court case, in the AdTech antitrust trial, they showed an email from the founder of DoubleClick when he presented for the first time ever to Google, talking about the 20 ways that he would strategically crush publishing by making promises that he couldn't keep and take all the money and move it to Google. And here we are many years later, and he's done exactly that. He did a great job, but it was awful. Now, where we are now, one of the people that was in that trial stepped forward and came on one of my podcasts recently and said, programmatic is fixed. You can't win. They've signed up all the advertisers. Google signed up all the agencies. They are maneuvering and fixing the numbers. You will never win in publishing. You have to return to direct sales. So what I predict is going to happen this year is that publishers will start to move back to direct sales and one-to-one relationships with advertisers. And that is going to be done with AI, agentic AI. So we can make it as efficient as programmatic, but the relationship will be outside the Google ecosystem, which is fixed for Google's benefit, not ours.
Oh, I thought we were going to get back some good old-fashioned direct sales teams. I thought we were going to get back some big swinging dicks.
At some point, we always did. Those guys are awesome.
I hope they're coming back. I like them.
In the tan leather jacket.
They were fun, man. This was when it was all a bit more fun.
The tan leather jacket guy.
Yeah.
Well,
big lunch.
He was the guy that told me that, any dollar is a good dollar. Yeah. Right. So he's off doing something else now. Yeah. So there's clearly a ton coming, and AI is going to be enormously important. But what I have to throw out to you that we are really good at what we do, and we don't get the love. We're the puppy in the pound that's been abused, but we're actually a really good industry, and we do a really good job. And I was on stage in Canada, Sarah. I don't know if you were in the room. There were 90 local publishers there that I'd been asked to talk to, and I gave a presentation a bit similar to this, and at the end of it, this publisher gets up, and he walks up to the mic, and he says, "Ricky," and I said, "Yeah." He said, "What did we do wrong?" And I said, "You didn't do anything wrong, buddy. A wrong thing was done to you." Okay? That's how I think we should feel about this. And we know this is true because Google's a once, twice, 3 times illegal monopolist. And we haven't got our justice for that yet, but the justice is coming. And Meta's going to be in court shortly, and it's going to be broken into 1 million pieces, and we can see new competition arrive there. But we're not done because Apple's up after that. Okay, and then Amazon's up for breakup after that, and then Microsoft's getting up. And you don't see a lot of this coverage in papers, okay, because we are a captured industry in this unfortunate 20 years. But all of these things are happening, and I spend an awful lot of time, and you've been on some of them, with the Federal Trade Commission in the US, and with the Department of Justice in the US, and with the ACCC in Australia, and with the DMA, and with the CMA, and with the EU. I addressed the United Nations this year. They invited me to speak. Everyone is on our side. The turning point has already happened. You're not feeling the benefits yet, and I'm really sorry that's true. But I promise you that the direction of traffic is towards you.
But the other thing I'd say is, if we'd said 20 years ago, if we'd done this sit down 20 years ago, and we'd said this is what's going to happen in the next 20 years, everybody would have said, "Oh my God, how are we going to survive that?" And we've seen some great examples, I think, in the sessions that we've already had here. People are finding ways, right? You are great navigators of a changing landscape. And so I hope what we've kind of laid out in the time that we've had is there are great reasons to believe that you're going to get assists from the governments, you're going to get assists from regulation, you're going to get assists from new competition, you're going to get assists from breakups. You're going to have the ability to change a strategy. You've got a chance to create great products for great humans who still want trusted information delivered as a service in their lives. And we are bullish, I would say bullish, about the prospects of publishers in the next 20 years. And that concludes our session. It says a massive time's up there. Get off the stage, it says.
Feel valued. Feel valued and be proud of what you do, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so
Thank you very much.
Did you like that time's up?